Awesome.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Two Rivers Tabac Book Club. As promised, we're switching over to Stephen King's The Dark Tower. We're going with The Wizard in Glass, which is book 4 in The Dark Tower. And this past week we read part 1, so we're gonna go over part 1. And
Yes, we are.
yeah, my name's Andrew, and then I'm joined by Josh. Hi, Josh.
Uh,
All right. So I'm just gonna kind of go over what happened in the last book. We kind of ended on a cliffhanger in the last book, so I'll just go over a little bit of what the context of the situation of this book is in the beginning here. So they're the quartet, which is the gang, Roland, Susanna, Eddie, and I can't remember the kid's name right now. Jake. They're all
Jake.
on, yeah, Mr. They're all on the train, Blaine the Mono, which is like a demon train, right? It's a high tech train that is sentient and has like the ability to understand like what's happening, and it's a demon train. It's very evil, so it wants to kill itself and also kill everyone in it, the quartet. And the only way that they're basically able to get out of it is to riddle it. So Blaine the Mono loves riddles, and they have to give it a riddle that it can't solve in order for them to survive.
Yep, it's a classic Bilbo versus Golem.
Yes,
Or Gollum.
sir.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
So it kind of
all
starts
right.
out, or yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying. All right. You're good.
um, it kind of starts out with they start with like easier riddles, and then they kind of go up from there. Like everybody kind of takes turns giving riddles, but Blaine kind of solves all of them instantaneously. Obviously, he's a computer. He has like the ability to search every riddle that he's ever seen in his computer, and he has access to the database of the city that they were in previously, so he can look up any riddle. But
Yeah.
Roland is convinced, if they riddle him enough and ask him enough questions, then they might be able to figure out a blind spot, any kind of blind spot that they can find within him to beat him.
Yeah. So they all take turns. They ask Blaine if they'll give him some space so they could like talk it over, and Blaine's overexcited and he's like, "Yeah, all right, let's go." So and then, that's when Roland starts talking to them about, okay, I'll tell these certain riddles, you guys will tell those certain riddles. And then when they actually start getting to it, Eddie Blaine's like so done with Eddie's shitty riddles that he's just like, I don't want to hear from you anymore. I just want to hear from the rest of
Like, get
like,
out of here, Eddie.
yeah, that was so funny.
Yeah, that was hilarious. I mean, Eddie is obviously like the comic relief of the gang, but it's just hilarious that the train who loves riddles hated Eddie's riddles so much that he didn't want him to give him any riddles anymore.
Yeah. And it was it's like before they even did all the riddles and stuff, like let's just talk about this train real quick, because like
Yeah.
Blaine, this train is like super cool because it's like if he wasn't insane, because it not only can it go like super fast and get you places, but it can like change its scenery, it can go invisible, so you could like see the landscapes and stuff. Because I know like at the beginning when they're talking about going over mountains, but then they just see like basically like a giant snake come out and like eat something, and then they're all just like,
Yeah.
"What the hell?" And they're all freaked out looking at all these monsters, and I'm just like, "Wow, I wish this was like, wish the movie had this." Or I never saw the movie anyway, but it's like
Yeah.
it'd be pretty cool to see like what kind of crazy stuff someone could come up with to put in those landscapes,
It
or
makes me
what things
think
would look
of
like.
those bullet trains. I remember reading about like bullet trains being created, I think in China and other parts of Asia. to like take people to from one city to another really quickly. It kind of reminds me. Obviously, it's not as high tech as this, but I feel like if we could get to a point where we had trains like this, it'd be crazy. Especially if it
Yeah.
can take you to a city that nobody ever wants to go to, like Topeka.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's
Take
really
you
funny.
across Middle America.
So like, we're both from Kansas, so hearing all this like Kansas stuff cracks me up.
It is
When they go,
hilarious.
yeah. I wonder if they'll go to like all the small towns and too and see what's up.
Yeah, they're probably like
Maybe.
super burned out and everything, but yeah,
I
it would be
wonder.
funny.
Yeah. It'd be funny if they went to Wichita.
Yeah, Wichita
Or like,
Shockers, baby.
yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, we call Topeka, if you're from Kansas, we sometimes call it Top City, but it is not the top city.
No,
It
it's
is. It is not good.
You wanna go to Power and Light?
Yeah, it's the bar
Uh,
area in Kansas City.
oh jeez.
Yeah, and
Any...
this is just gonna become a
Sorry, you
Kansas
can go.
podcast. We're just only gonna talk about Kansas stuff
Yeah.
now.
I have a 50 states book. I'll just pull that shit out right now. See what it says about Kansas.
There you go. Well,
It's
yeah, I am
quiet. There's
actually
nothing to
curious. I
do.
kind of want to hear that. It's like honestly, this is the only time we're gonna be able to talk about Kansas and Kansas City because very rarely in any media form is Kansas and Kansas City mentioned besides like Wizard of Oz and oh my god, I'm
Yeah.
sure I think we've talked about this when we've hung out, but we live in the Southwest now, and anytime I'm like around people who aren't from Kansas, the first thing I hear when I say I'm from Kansas is, "Oh, you're not in Kansas anymore."
Oh my god, I heard that my
Oh
whole
my
life.
god, it is the curse of
It's
being from Kansas.
it's like at this point I'm just like, bro, it's pretty cringe. Stop.
It
I just can't take it anymore. I'm gonna lose my
is,
mind.
and everybody, it's like the dad at the grocery store who's like, when something doesn't scan, he's like, "Oh, I guess it's free." It's just like the
Yeah.
joke that everybody thinks is original, but it's not
Yeah,
an original joke. Literally,
it's like
everyone has heard it
it's
and
like, oh, I
thought of
bet you
it.
haven't heard this before.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't give a fuck about Toto anymore. I just don't.
Yeah, Toto's
I'm
a
done.
stupid dog.
Yeah,
No, he's a good boy, but not.
we're getting way off topic.
I know, but we had to pay homage to
Okay.
Kansas City because I mean, when do we
Yeah,
ever
we
get
did.
the opportunity in
I'm
Topeka?
I'm never going to Lawrence again. Just so you know, I'm done. Never doing it.
Yeah, and I think
Especially K State,
right,
Manhattan. Never again.
the worst university in the country.
Literally the worst.
Um, but yeah, I'm pretty sure he mentions the University of Kansas as well and Lawrence
Yeah,
later on in this. We'll get into that when they're later when they're in Topeka. But yeah,
when they oh, is it a will they won't they make it
yeah,
to
who knows? Are
Topeka?
they gonna make it? I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
But so like so Eddie's out of the game and he's just kind of staring into space like he's thinking and uh the chick what's her name again? I'm
Susanna.
like blinking. Susanna. Susanna's just like thinking about nudging him out of it because they're getting their asses kicked. Because Blaine can just answer literally everything they're throwing. And but Roland like gives her a sign and he's like, no, don't. It might come in useful later.
Right.
And everything's getting pretty bleak. And then like what they get to this one part uh where they're going over a waterfall or going like through a waterfall and there's like all these statues and stuff popping out and Jake was talking to Blaine like about his arm because of the last book they're on a bridge and Jake was like saving Oi who like fell off and Oi like bit his arm to stay on and had a big gash in it. And so Blaine was like repairing it for him, because he was in like a good mood. And then he asked us a certain question. Oh no, he made a mistake, is what he did, because
Yeah.
he was like talking about an old TV show, and like mentioned a character, and Jake's just like, yeah, that's not a real person. That was That was an actor or actress or whatever, and he was like laughing at Blaine, and Blaine didn't like that, so he like turned up the volume, and apparently, like, could you imagine it being like so like a noise being so loud that you just start crying?
Yeah, I mean that's just rough. It's just a different kind of torture, you know. I feel like we think of conventional torture as, you know, flaying somebody, beating someone up, whatever you want to think about,
Yeah,
but
pulling nails
pulling
out, teeth.
nails, yeah, you know, we've all seen Game of Thrones, like that kind of stuff. But with
Freak.
this, it's like a different
So
kind of torture, like auditory.
yeah, we don't see much of that. And well, at least I haven't seen much of that in the media, so that's been pretty cool. I
Yeah,
think of an interesting way.
it's this is also kind of a comedic moment mentioning the mistake with Jake again, because he creates that illusion of that actress from the old sitcom, and he also creates like an illusion of Marilyn Monroe, and he's, you know, saying like, hey, you can have sex with them if you want.
Yeah. Oh shit.
And
Yeah.
Jake's like, I'm like 12 years old, I think I'm good. And that's another mistake he makes, is he doesn't understand, you know, appropriate age for
Yeah.
activities like that. I'll call it
Because
activities, but you know.
it's that was that was really funny
It's
because
so
Blaine's
funny.
just like he's just like, oh well, I'm not gonna let you have sex with them anymore. And then
Yeah.
Jake's like, I'm not. He's like, oh, I not wasn't going to anyway.
Yeah, if I was Jake, I'd be like, stupid, idiot.
Dude, I'll be like, let's go. I mean, Marilyn Monroe. When will you? You'll never get another chance, Jake. He doesn't even see. It's like 3 books from now, right? Last book, very end, and Jake's gonna be like, "Damn, I should have fucked Marilyn
Yeah,
Monroe
he's
on
gonna be like
board."
25. Like, ah, man. Well, you can just be like Roland and go to the whorehouse, and then your dad finds you, and then and
That
then
beats your
beats
ass.
your ass, and is like, go east, my son, whatever that means. But yeah. So I just wanted to mention that comedic part. But yeah,
It, but
I can't remember exactly right off the top of my head.
I remember the riddles were getting pretty intense. Like
Yeah,
Roland was given like hundreds, uh, and he's like, you know what was really funny is learning about like Roland's past and how he was like never that good at riddles. Yet he's like the best one out of all of them. Obviously because he like grew up with it, and
yeah,
so and then it also plays a key role in uh things passing on in this world. Because even like Roland's like, I can't remember everything, and that's probably due to the Dark Tower crumbling, which is messing with my memory, and the world is fading, and Suzanne is like, oh, you poor thing, you're moving on, and with all sad and shit, and I'm just like, Roland's like, ah, fuck.
yeah. No, for
And I'm just
sure.
like, I'm just like, it's it's crazy because I wonder if that's gonna be a theme too. Then I wonder what it's gonna be like once they get to the end of the Dark Tower series. Like, is Roland, how much different is he gonna be? Like, is he gonna lose himself? Is he even gonna like what's he gonna forget and what's he gonna remember?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if he's kind of moving on with the world and he's tied to it. I'm sure, you know, as they get closer to the tower, like you said, he's gonna get less effective. I do think
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting bringing up that he's not good at riddles. Like up until this point, I mean, he's not good at riddles compared to the other gunslingers. I mean, compared to these normal people, he's amazing at them. But you know, up until this point, we haven't had like a lot of times where he really has any weaknesses besides, you know, his obsession with the Dark Tower, which I don't know if I necessarily call it a weakness, but it shows that he'll do anything, including sacrificing Jake in an earlier book to get to the Dark Tower. Um,
Yeah,
but this
I
riddle thing is an interesting weakness where he's maybe not as good at mind games and mind
yeah.
puzzles.
See, like I'd say earlier, like with the doing anything for the tower, like being a tower junkie, as Eddie said it,
Yeah.
is like a weakness in his character because he's to him it's like gunslinger, proper uh like not necessarily not a hero, but you're kind of like a noble ish. So uh it's like if you'll to sacrifice anyone or anything to get to the tower, and then it's like a moral weakness. Because then it's like at the end of the day, it's like you may like if he accomplishes his goal at the Dark Tower and all that, but he had to give up a lot of stuff along the way. Then it's like, well, did you really win? I guess it depends. We don't know. We don't know what the Dark Tower even entails or how to fix it. So I might be completely wrong in this statement to where it might be worth it if the entire world is saved. Then it's like, oh, okay, you could argue that. So,
Yeah, I mean, we'll kind of have
but
to see as it plays out, but I could definitely see what you're saying with the arc of him continuing to pick the Dark Tower over everything else, and in the end, it might not be worth it necessarily. Like he might destroy a lot more than saving, but I guess we'll kind of see.
was that a Wheel of Time reference? I don't know.
Oh
Read the
wow!
books.
The
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
wheel weaves as the
Oh, the
wheel
wheel.
wills,
Damn right.
just like the wheels on Blaine the Mono.
Well, playing the mono.
I
This,
or go ahead. Sorry.
what I was to say is that uh, is like I didn't know if you wanted to carry on with the story or if you wanted to keep talking about some specific.
I don't have anything else specific necessarily, but
Yeah. So so I guess towards because it's weird because like in the book the whole Blaine thing takes a little while. I'd say it's probably the majority of part one, but then when
mhm.
you're like we're talking about it, it goes by pretty quick. I feel like because now we're basically already on a section where it's like the end. Blaine's speeding up and he's like, "Hey, if you guys have your best riddles, give them now." And then Roland's all out of riddles. Like he's like, "I got no more." And then the despair grows. Suzanne's beat, and then it's up to Jake. And so Jake like had hope for a little bit when Roland was pulling out those best ones, but at first when Blaine was like answering the riddles, it was kind of a little slow at first, but then he just started answering them immediately. So even like these hardest of riddles, even like one of them, he's like, "This riddle has four answers," and then gave all four answers. I'm just like, damn.
Yeah, yeah,
So Jake has uh like a little bit of hope because he's like, well, I didn't just get this book for no reasons, but like Roland was telling him. But Blaine answers all his answers and or all the questions, and uh Jake's just like, okay, like we're gonna die. I want to sit next to Roland and hold his hand and have Oi in my lap. And then Suzanne's like, if we die, I want Eddie to be snapped out of it. And then we go into Eddie when everyone else fails and despair is at its highest. We go straight into Eddie. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about any of the despair or the ending riddles or anything.
no, I think you covered it pretty well. Now that we're and yeah, we're kind of transitioning into to where Eddie makes
Yeah.
the
So
yeah.
yeah. So I guess Eddie then has like he's like daydreaming of a time with his older brother who he's like his older brother was obviously jealous of him, which he knows now is why he treated him like shit. But then there was that one time where he made him feel good, and it was when they're all the kids and bullshitting in New York about basically lying about shit they did to make themselves be cool. But no one's gonna call each other out because then they'd call each other out on their bullshit. So it gets to a point where they're like, "Who would you want in a fight?" And, everyone's picking all these other people, and then Eddie's brother is like, I want Eddie with me, and everyone's like, "What the fuck? Why? Like, look at him." And then he's like, "Eddie could." Eddie could talk the devil into setting himself on fire, and I was like, holy shit, that's pretty cool. And because Eddie's one of my favorite characters in this story. Well, actually, I like all of them; they're all my favorite. But Eddie, for a particular reason, because he's just a funny guy, and like the way Stephen King's written him, he's just a guy who, uses humor to cover up pain, and has done it so much that he just doesn't shut the fuck up, and so he just keeps on going. And due to like that memory, and the whole fact that Blaine doesn't like silly games, don't ask him
Yes.
silly questions.
The choo choo.
Did you? Hey, Andrew. Why is the dead baby across the road?
Oh, why?
Oh, it's stapled to a chicken. It's not funny.
It's
It's
not
not
funny
funny
at
at
all.
all.
It's
It's a
stupid as hell.
terrible joke. I fucking hate it. Like the whole time. The only reason like I was like laughing is because of the situation. Like I have this recovered junkie guy from fucking New York, and the voice actor is hilarious, and they're talking to a sentient train that's gonna crash into some shit and kill all of them. And all Eddie says is just like, why'd the baby cross the road? 'Cause it's stapled to a chicken. I'm like, that's so dumb. But I love it. But I love it.
I just love so many parts about this scene, and it really shows Stephen King's like writing ability because he wraps so many things back together. So, like you said, Eddie, his defense mechanism being humor, and then Roland hating that Eddie's defense mechanism is humor and calls him out on it all the time and tells him to stop all the time. But in this case, it is what is needed because Charlie the Choo Choo Train does not like silly questions and doesn't play silly games, which is obviously Blaine the Mono
Yeah.
is like the demon version of that. But I also liked when Henry and the voice actor really sells it too, but like when Henry talks about like the trance state that Eddie's in where he's in the fucking zone. Like
Yeah.
and I love sports, so it kind of just like brought me back to like, big sports moments that I've watched where like people are in the fucking zone, and they're like, "All
Yeah.
right, I know what I need to do to get out of this situation or to execute." So,
Yeah.
just a lot of stuff wrapped into one ending sequence that is like very well written and hilarious as well. And I mean, he's just a good
Yeah.
writer.
It it went by pretty quick because there was a lot that happened in like this little section, of like the ending part of Blaine, and it's like you got Blaine is like his circuits are getting kind of wonky because he's getting pissed off. You got little Blaine comes out and is like, "Stop! You're killing him! You're killing him!" And then Suzanne's like, "Sorry, honey, but he's trying to kill us, so fuck him and fuck you." And I'm
Right.
like, damn, Suzanne, you fucking don't give a fuck. And then like uh and so it continues, and it's so funny like Eddie, because he keeps throwing these stupid jokes out, but then in between he's like, yeah, you like that fucker, yeah, you stupid ass, hey, you don't like silly questions, huh? How about this? And then just keeps saying dumb shit, and then Blaine's like, no, no. It's like and then it's like Stephen King's like talking about like the train going fucking ape shit, uh and how like the Topeka light like keeps blinking, uh but then like uh but then the like when Blaine dies, like the train derails and they like slide onto this other ship. But before that, when like Blaine dies, and then Roland's like, good job, Eddie, but we ain't out of the shitter, or whatever he says. And
Yeah, yeah.
He's like everyone like huddle up here because when it crashes we don't know what we're gonna hit
Right.
or how we're gonna stop. So, but then then I forget what order they were in, but I know just like once it hit, everyone basically just flew to the other side
Yeah.
of the cabin, and the chandelier broke and all that good stuff.
In the end of Blaine. I do want to
Hmm.
talk also just like the expectations of how they were going to kill. Obviously they're going to get past Blaine, otherwise the
Yeah.
series would end. But I forgot about the Charlie the Choo Choo Train does not like silly questions and does not like silly games. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I thought they were maybe you were smarter than me and you predicted it better, but I was like, oh, they'll probably just give him a riddle that's insane and he can't solve it. But in reality, what they needed to do was give him the stupidest riddles on earth.
Yeah.
So
Which,
kind of subverted expectations there, where you needed to give him dumbass riddles, not good ones.
yeah. It's like one of those things where Stephen King kind of like he foreshadowed it so much because like with the storybook and all that, but then you then at the end of the last book you come to the like I'd assume most people came to the conclusion that you don't ask him silly questions because he'll kill you because that's how like because he was like killing like children and like other people like he doesn't give a fuck like they ask
Yeah,
him
yeah,
dumb questions or they don't get it wrong he kills them so like at first that's kind of like how I thought too is because you don't that's like a warning like you don't tell him that stuff because he'll just kill you straight up and so they didn't uh but then they used that same technique to kill him which makes so much sense because otherwise like you have an AI that's been around God knows how long could be centuries or whatever. Like we have no sense of time. So you don't know how long this thing's been alive. You don't know how much shit it knows, especially from being connected to the internet. So there would be no satisfying way that it could have concluded with him not answering a riddle. So the way Stephen King wrote it to where in order to beat him, you had to basically just piss him off, I think is a way better conclusion to Blaine than if Eddie just came up like stupid. Let's be honest, the stupidest of the four, and just came up with the best riddle that that AI couldn't answer. Like it's just that's just not possible.
yeah, definitely.
So yeah,
I
so this was like the only way.
yeah, thinking about it that way, it definitely makes sense how this would be the only way to kind of defeat it. And I like this antagonist because I like the action oriented antagonist too. You know, when they fought the bear and they had to like shoot the disc at the top of its head, and it was a high stakes situation in the last book. But this is like a different kind of antagonist where it has the capability of killing you quickly, like you're just saying, but you had to beat it in a different way, which I thought was it's a little bit
Yeah,
more interesting than just I mean shooting the bear and stuff is cool too, but um,
yeah,
this is a different kind of antagonist. It's you get a different flavor.
yeah. Like I get what you're saying. It mixes it up because like in
Yeah.
this world, most of the time we've seen them uh they've thought a lot too, but a lot of the times you got to shoot their way out to win, right?
Yes.
Uh this is one of those instances that flips it and it's like we can't physically do anything. This is something of the mind
Right.
that you gotta like that you gotta think through. And I really like that. It's kind of like the whole point of even reading in the first place is to kind of gain more of an intelligence or wisdom or whatever you want from it. And so this is the kind of like problem that I like to read about.
Yeah.
I do like reading about other stuff too, but I do like these as well.
Yeah.
Mixes up.
Well, you also read to see, a train create an illusion of Marilyn Monroe that could have had sex with a 12-year-old. That's also why you,
Yeah, could have.
yeah.
I don't know why Stephen King didn't just have Jake fuck it right in
Yeah.
front of Roland,
It would
Susanna.
be on
I mean,
brand. It would
to
be
to
on brand.
like, to be honest, I'm kind of surprised that Marilyn Monroe wasn't just like trying to rape Jake because like knowing Stephen King, a lot of his a
His
lot of his
work.
writings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised Blaine didn't like do something, which I'm glad he didn't.
Yeah, Stephen King would turn the like Marilyn Monroe sexual encounter into like some twisted shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm really like surprised about it with the whole Blaine thing. But otherwise, I'm glad so far this book's been pretty tame. Not like the last book where
Yes. Last book was a
Like
lot more intense. The action
which
scenes there.
which I also like because there was a scene in the last book where that what's his name is like Groucher, where it's
Yeah,
like
it
the guy at the
was
end of the
Gasher.
bridge,
Yeah, Gasher.
Gasher. Yeah, and he's like keep going. He's like shut up, you squint cunt, or something like that. I was
Yeah.
just like Jesus. But then he was getting really rapey with Jake too,
He
which I'm
was.
glad
He was.
it didn't happen.
Yeah, you like Stephen King does a good job like creating real dread of like, and obviously Roland knows that could be a possibility too. It just ends up he goes to the TikTok man, and they're not gonna do that, but um,
Yeah, thank God.
yeah, but
Just
it made it seem
I don't
like
want to
that was
read.
gonna be the outcome.
Yeah,
And
it's
pardon
like,
my pun there. Outcome.
I was gonna say, like anything would have been better than Jake
Yeah,
actually. I was like, no,
I was like, if we have to listen, if I have to listen to the audio book reader talk about that, I just
I would like, just like I
God.
don't know about that, Chief.
That's the thing with Stephen King is like anything is possible. So
Yeah,
you have a real sense of like, God, I really don't want this to happen because he will do it. He will write it.
he will. He
Yeah,
will. He doesn't not give a fuck. It's
yeah,
like
he will do
that.
that.
It's honestly what I like about Stephen King is that when you read his books, and anything can happen, and it doesn't matter how dark, how twisted, or anything. It'll always surprise you, and debatably be good. But I always like his twists and turns so far in the books I've read. So
Yeah,
it's knowing that he would go that far makes it makes his stories more interesting because you don't know what's gonna happen. Like
absolutely,
anything is possible.
absolutely. Subverts expectations.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if you're watching a movie or whatever, a TV show, they can't go past a certain line. But in a book, you know, you can do whatever you want in a book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they're like people aren't even reading books these days anyway, so we can just write whatever we want.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess we can move on a little bit.
Yeah, we kind of went on a tangent there, but
Yeah.
uh,
So
yeah, where
where
were
did you
we?
want to go? It was so they killed Blaine.
Yep.
They're getting ready to leave. Susanna makes like a little joke where she's like where they're like going to walk out and she's like, oh, I don't want you behind me, white boy. You might I don't want you to like catch a look or something or pinch her butt. And then Eddie just went and like pinched her butt and she's like, ooh, it's just like Jesus.
Yeah. Stephen King has to get his jollies in.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
So.
Well, I mean, you gotta do something to make their whole relationship
Yeah.
seem legit. So if they
Yeah,
never
yeah.
did any like any shit like that, then it would just be like, okay, so they're together, but you don't really feel it. But
Right.
like little stuff like this really sells it for me.
Of course, definitely.
Um, and then Roland is like, Eddie, I'm sorry, I have forgotten the face of my father and like all this stuff. And Eddie's like, no, it's not that. It's just we're
I was in
just
the fucking zone,
I was in the
Roland.
fucking zone. He's like you're just built different, or he said something similar to that,
Yeah.
and then Roland's just like, because he's never heard these kind of sayings before, so he was just kind of pondering it like it's like the wisest thing, and he's like, oh, never thought of that before. I am different. I'm like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah, Roland's character is funny sometimes because he knows so much about certain things and he's amazing at like survival, fighting, weaponry. But like he's kind of a little bit naive just because he doesn't know these other sayings and stuff. So he's almost like a child in that regard like to that stuff. So it's kind of funny. But
Yeah, like he knows. Yeah, like you said, like he knows survival stuff. He knows kind of like outward uh world things, but when it comes to like him as an individual, like as a person, he doesn't know himself.
Yeah,
Like
and
he's
yeah,
he's like obsessed with the Dark Tower and like has to do all this stuff. He loves Jake, loves all his new friends and all that. But that when Eddie said that, and then Roland's just like, "Oh, I never thought of it like that," and it really makes you think this guy like has never thought about like who he is like ever. He always just kind of goes with the flow and does his thing, you know.
yeah, obsessed with the Dark Tower.
And yeah, do you know what comes next, or you want me to keep going?
Oh, you can go right ahead. Yeah, because we're kind of in Topeka now, right?
Yeah, so
Yep.
so they get out and go and they're in Topeka and they're looking around and they're just kind of like, what the fuck is this? I don't think like shouldn't we be close to the Dark Tower? And so that somehow when Blaine died and went off the rails, they got off the path of the beam and they accidentally went through a thinny. So how Stephen King describes the thinny is it's like bubbles, time zones that lead to alternate worlds. And since his world is one of those worlds that has the Dark Tower and it's crumbling, these thinnies are popping up because the world is breaking. I guess is the sorry, I got burps. Is
Mm-hmm.
the best way to describe it, because so they accidentally go through one, and they can still see the path of the beam, but they don't know if this new world has a tower. So so they decide to just keep going, and as they're in Topeka, uh, they find like Jake finds this little newspaper thing, and he's just like, "Hey, anyone got a quarter?" And then no, obviously no one has a quarter, and Eddie's like, "Oh, I must have lost mine when I fought this bear before we met you." Uh, and then I think Roland just shoots it up, shoots the lock,
Yeah.
and shoots it open. So it's super funny. And then and then for those out there, I have read the extended version of The Stand. Uh, Andrew has not. So because of this, I will only be obviously only in the sense this is a Dark Tower video. I will only be talking stuff about The Stand that that happens and what we've read in the Dark Tower. Um, it would be nice to talk more about the other stuff, but I don't want to spoil anything for Andrew or if anyone hasn't read The Stand yet. But uh, as the Dark Tower series goes on, and possibly by the last video, I'll probably be talking more about. So this isn't a spoiler, but Randall Flagg or the Dark Man it is uh, the same TikTok man and all that in this series. So that's why like The Stand and some of other Stephen King's books are necessary, or at least a little bit necessary, or have some sort of plot convenience with this story, is because Randall Flagg is in multiple stories of Stephen King's. So this is a reoccurring character. It is the same character from The Stand, the tall man, the dark man, Randall Flagg. So he is a TikTok man,
That's
and
cool
that's
that
why, yeah,
he's like recurring and stuff. I think that's really cool.
yeah, I like it too. I don't know if what happens obviously we don't know what happens at the end of the Dark Tower, but maybe he gets killed off or something. Because I looked at the list of books he's in, and he is in a few others besides the Dark Tower books. But I don't know if it's one of those characters that is still around and Stephen King can continue to use, or if his plot or if his whole character ended in the Dark Tower. I mean, we'll find out, but that's one of the questions I have for this series.
Interesting.
So so Jake picks up a newspaper and starts reading it because Roland can't read it. He doesn't understand the language and the lettering. And as as Jake's reading the newspaper, it's talking about how many people died from the flu, Captain Trips, and basically 90% of the world gets killed off. If I think I remember correctly, I think they said this is like I want to say 4 months after it happened.
Yeah, it was
I
something
don't
like that. Yeah,
something
4 months.
like that.
And like obviously
So
Topeka looks like it ravaged it a little
yeah,
bit.
so I think like the stand, like the book as a whole, um, like I'm thinking of like this one character, but I'm thinking it's only like 3 or 6 months. Here, let me Google it real quick, just so I can get
Oh,
kind of like a timeline.
okay, so it's similar in the
How long
stand.
was the plot in the stand? Oh. I was just trying to see like how much time passes in the stand.
Okay.
5 months of missing action between time Stu escapes military bunker and held remain. Oh, so basically, the stand probably take the whole book probably takes place, or at least during the major plots, takes place within 4 or 5 months. Uh, I at least 9 months has to occur between the beginning and the end, and I don't want to spoil why, but that's just what that is. And so during this part of the Dark Tower, when they're in the stand, I'm gonna guess and just say maybe halfway through the stand. But by that time, everybody is in the west. So them being in Topeka, if I don't think they're gonna run into anybody, and if they do run into anybody, I'd be shocked. Like it would have to be people from like, but not even then. I don't think. So actually, never mind. So I don't think they're gonna run into anybody. But the whole takeaway about this is that uh, they're all worried that this could be a possible future in their future, their old worlds. So I
Right.
think like the stand. Let's see. I think it came out in the 1980s, but it takes place in the 1990s. So Jake's from what, the 60s or 70s?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and so Suzanne is from like the 50s, 40s, 50s, and then Eddie is from the late 80s, early 90s. So Eddie's like the closest. So they're all
Yeah.
talking, and Roland's like, this could either be your futures or it could not be. Uh, who knows? And then, they're all getting kind of worried because they're just like, shit. Uh, I hope this isn't our world, because even Jake's like, I don't, my parents who were shitheads, but I don't want this to be their future. And then so then they come up with the idea to look at car brands, right? And to see if any of them recognize them, to see if it could be their world. And they find like a weird one, I forget the name of it, but it's, just some one Stephen King made up. So it's like confirmed that this future was not one of their futures, but because all worlds are connected to the Dark Tower, and because the Dark Tower is dwindling, the virus of Captain Trips and stuff, I think this is what they're relying on, could spread to other worlds because of the thinnies. And
Right. Yep.
and I know since you haven't read The Stand yet, but the disease, because this may come into play later with them being in the world of The Stand, is that there's no cure for it, right? So I'm not giving away the plots or anything. I'm just talking about like the first section of
Mm.
when it goes through the flu, just so you kind of get a grasp of the situation. So this flu like starts off as like a mild cough. Uh, it gets worse, but then it gets better, and then out of nowhere you die. So you're like puking up blood and like puffing up and like all this shit. It's super grotesque, but it's like that because it's the virus changes, so your body gets accustomed to it, and then it changes and it keeps changing so rapidly that your body can't keep up with fighting it, so you
Oh.
eventually die.
Hmm.
So them being in this world, if one I'm saying if one of them gets sick, they're fucked. Like they're dead.
Oh
Like
wow.
there is no cure. So that's the whole thing about the stand is is why I'm a little worried about our heroes. And I definitely know they're not going to kill Roland off. But knowing Stephen King, I mean, there's four of them. I don't know. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, that context is good because it definitely raises the threat level and the endangerment. Because yeah, if one of them catches it, then they could just die. And especially that they're like
Yeah,
rummaging around in Topeka and stuff. I mean, you never. I don't know how it's spread within the stand, but
yeah. I'm not gonna say any that part because I don't want to tell you the whole book.
yeah, no, no.
I'll just give you a few stuff here
The
and there.
context though of that is good though. That
Yeah,
because I
but
would have never. Because obviously they mentioned there's a flu and everything, and everybody either died or left because of that. So I did kind of think about okay, maybe one of them could get it if they're rummaging around in the city, but the idea that there's no cure and it's you're dead for sure, that's definitely like raises the stakes.
yeah. So it's so that's why when they started reading it about Captain Trips and stuff, if you haven't read the book, like how's that when they start describing it to you, like with all the people dying and all that stuff, like since you haven't read The Stand from your point of view, what were you like? Were you just like, oh, okay, this is just gonna be an abandoned uh play environment until they get to the next thing, or like
Yeah,
what were your
basically.
thoughts?
Yeah, I was just kind of interpreting it
Basically.
as like, okay, there's probably nobody in this town. If they find someone, they're probably sick. And I felt like that could be a scenario that could happen maybe in the next part where they find someone who's sick, but it sounds like there's probably nobody here. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, because
it's easy for me to kind of interpret it a little bit more because obviously I mean, we're recording this in 2022, but the COVID pandemic happened in 2020. So at one point,
yeah.
there weren't many people walking around when it first hit. So, I mean, it's easy for me to kind of imagine it.
Yeah. So I was like my my first thing is like when I heard they started talking about it in this book, and I was like, okay, so they're not gonna run into anybody, zero people, because they're gonna find a lot of corpses everywhere. Uh,
Right.
and then one of them might catch the flu. So that was my first thing, and I was like, if one person catches it, because this is also what makes me think that none of them are gonna catch it, because since they don't know anything about the flu or anything, right, or how it works. So if one of them gets sick, odds are they'll all get sick. And then if they all get sick, they're gonna die. So it's like
Right.
I don't think any of them will get sick. I think this is just gonna be a ploy to where they can be undisturbed for a while so that Roland can give his part of his backstory.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking that as well because there's no one in the town. It's going to take some time for them to move on from Topeka. And yeah, that
Hmm.
kind of leads in a good transition into like the final part of this, part one, which is Susanna really hammering Roland to like talk more about his previous love interest and like his life.
Yeah, because they get to Topeka, or so they're in Topeka, right? Or are they like almost there? I feel
I
like they're
think pretty sure
almost
they're
there.
in Topeka.
Okay.
I think it's not like
Yeah, I
Topeka's
think
a
yeah,
huge town, but
yeah. All right,
we've
let's
been
just
there
say
too
they
many
made it to
times.
Topeka. Yeah, never again. I don't know when I'll go back to Kansas, but
Yeah.
but so like they start hearing this buzzing noise, right? As soon as like after they read the, or maybe it was before the paper. Either way,
Oh yeah, that
they
sequence. Yes.
yeah, so they're hearing this noise and everyone's like, "Gosh, golly, this is annoying as fuck." And then like Roland's face is like absolute despair, like they've never seen before, and even Eddie is just like, "Oh god damn." And so like Roland's face is just so pale, and he just starts saying Susanna, Susanna the witch, and like all this stuff, and then other Susanna is like, "Who's this other Susanna you be talking about and shit?" And so Roland's like, don't wanna talk about it, and then they eventually kind of move on. Uh, I think that part was before the stand reference, but
And they
I
put
can't remember.
the shells in their ears, right, as earplugs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Roland has those shells that in book two got wet when he like stormed up on the beach,
Yep.
and they couldn't be shot anymore. But apparently they still work good as earbuds, which is like it's such a weird. I think it's really cool, but it's also kind of like, damn, that's some cool world building type stuff there because it's such a little thing to where bullets could be used as earmuffs too.
Yeah, it's a weird it's an interesting visual too, like in your brain imagining people like putting gun shells in their ears to block out noise, which we have another scenario here of like an auditory challenge, I guess, cuz Blaine was blaring sound before and now they have another
Hmm.
sound thing they have to deal with, but yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like if Roland knew Blaine was going to pull some shit, he could have just given them the bullets earlier.
Yeah, right.
So, and then like as they're like leaving Topeka or yeah, wherever they're going on their journey, it was like Jake is now the one frightened and scared, and then everyone's like, "Oh, what's the matter, boy?" It's like he's probably just still worrying about his family. Then they get over to Jake to find out that in this universe, Blaine or not Blaine, Charlie the fucking Choo Choo was real. Like it's real, like
Yes.
straight up the drawing and every. I don't know if you guys know
Yeah.
what the actual book looks like, but it was real. And so they're like debating on whether like the author of that book like was from this reality or like went into this reality or what, or they're just trying to figure out the connection. And Roland's like, it doesn't matter, we'll never find out, so who cares? So it's I thought I was not expecting that because I'll tell you the first time I read The Stand, I'll tell you my first thought was definitely not, wow, I wonder if that children's book Charlie the Choo Choo is going to be a real train into Topeka, Kansas, and in this universe
Right?
with a
It's been
with a virus that
confirmed.
kills 98% of the population.
Yes.
So, uh, yeah. So the gist of the story after that. Oh, actually, what did you think about like that? So the Charlie Choo Choo thing has finally come to a close, but I was not expecting that fucking train.
Yeah, me either, but I'm glad that he put it in there. It's like a cameo. Doesn't Jake like talk to the train too, and um, or he imagines talking to it or something like that? And
Oh, I think he like sees it flash a light at him,
yeah, yeah,
but no one else saw it but
right,
him.
right, just him. I liked it.
And
It was a
then
little like
yeah,
homage, but yeah, if you haven't, Josh was talking about, if you haven't looked up Charlie the Choo Choo Train, the actual book, please look it up because the cover art is haunting. Like
yeah, it's disturbing.
the choo choo train is really weird.
It's like
It reminds me of like those grim tales, like the real tale of like the Little Mermaid, or like the real tale of like Hansel and Gretel and stuff. They're like fucked up, like the old ones.
yeah,
It's like this Charlie the Choo Choo Train is like a kid's book, but it's pretty creepy.
it is creepy. Like as a children's book goes, like the how it's like written is fine. It's just that train is creepy as shit. Like Stephen King was right. Like, but I do like how because like because we got to think in the context of like Stephen King writing this book. He's just like, okay, I'm gonna take this existing book and I'm just gonna shit all over it. But I don't necessarily. I don't think he was shitting on it. I think he just took like I don't know. Maybe he liked it as a kid, or maybe just always found it interesting or creepy. But he was bringing to at least to me, it looked like a long lost children's book that maybe not a lot of people remember because I didn't grow up with this book. So and then like bringing something from like his childhood to life to help him inspire basically a huge section of this story because a lot of like the whole third book was about getting to this train and it was building all it up and so uh it's just interesting how he and I like how he like paid the homage to it at the end where it's like basically a thank you for letting me borrow this story of yours.
Yeah. No, it's I really liked it. He's really good at like weaving different things into the storyline. Obviously he's a good writer, but yeah, it was cool.
And so as they're leaving Topeka, or maybe they're still in Topeka or on their way to Topeka. Oh no, they are in Topeka. Newspaper, yeah. So they're in Topeka, Kansas, and so I think they're just continuing the line of the beam, and they're like, Roland, you can't get out of it this time. You got to tell us. And he's like, all right, not today. And they're like, you say that every day. We're not no. And he's like, all right, tomorrow. And then like the whole time they're walking the next day, uh, like they're like, "What's wrong with Roland? He's hasn't talked like at all. He's all looks all depressed and like all this stuff." And then Suzanne's like, "Oh, I know why. It's because he doesn't want to tell us. He doesn't want to tell the story." But so then at the end, they're like, when they got set up, uh, they're like, "Roland, you don't have to if you don't want to." And he's like, "No, I know all your guys's, and it's only fair. And I think I need to get this off my chest." And so that's when he started uh and and that whole thing is like it takes place after the first so in the first book if you remember and it goes through Roland's a little bit of Roland's backstory about him jerking off on the top of a building and
Oh
and
man.
then finding out his just casually casually right say that he finds out his mom's cheating on his dad and
Right.
fights his mentor to become a gunslinger, then goes and fucks a prostitute. And so we knew all that, but then now we get a little more information about Roland's dad busting in on him and the hooker, and that whole scene was pretty cool. It's like Roland's butt ass naked, right? His dad just picks him up, throws him on the floor. The slut or whatever whore leaves because she doesn't want to get shot. Once they all the guns. And then Roland's like, or Roland's dad's like, you've forgotten the face of your father, like all this shit. He's like, you're too young. And then Roland's like, no, I saw that bastard was fucking my mom, and I did not forget the face of my father. And then his dad's just like, basically like, oh, I love you. Well, he doesn't say I love you, but he's like, oh, so you didn't forget the face of your father, but like, I've known for 2 years, and then like sets him on a new quest to go east, and that whole scene. I'll let you take over for a little bit because I've been like going on it, talking a whole lot for these parts. But what
Oh
did you
no,
think
you're good.
about that?
I really liked it because it makes me excited for the next part too because I imagine we're going to get a lot more backstory for from his perspective as a gunslinger becoming a gunslinger and stuff. I really like those sequences in the previous books, especially what you were kind of talking about when especially the duel with Court when he used the Falcon as his weapon. That was like like a epic moment because he beats his teacher and he becomes a gun. He beat like one of the strongest people. So I'm excited to see like more about like what he did after that and more of like what happens to him to get him to this point where he's just obsessed with the Dark Tower. And I'm also, interested to hear about his previous love interest and his other friends, because he talks about a lot about how like Eddie reminds him of one of his friends a lot, and maybe we'll get a little bit on how they died or if Roland betrayed them and they died or whatever happened where they obviously moved
Hmm.
on.
He he did say that he was worried about telling them what happened because he thinks they'd look at him different.
Right.
Because I think he did, but I don't know. Like I think he betrayed his friends, but not for. But I don't know. I just don't know. That's just kind of my thought is that he betrayed his friends over something that he found more like he probably put the mission before them, and ended up getting someone killed or something, and so that's probably that's my best guess. Because
Yeah.
I mean, he's done that before. Like he
Yeah, I
did that
mean,
with Jake. He let Jake die.
yeah, it wouldn't be
So
surprising. I mean, he let a 12-year-old die, so,
yeah,
letting his other friends die wouldn't be that surprising.
yeah. He fucked a succubus. He put a gun up a pregnant woman's vagina
Yeah, he
and
did
threatened
that
to
too.
kill her demon baby.
Yeah.
He's murdered an entire town of people.
Yeah, his
Like,
report card is not great. I think
yeah,
it hits harder though at this point because he's like he has like real friendships with all the characters that are with him right now. So
hmm
when we get reminded again if he does tell the story of him betraying his friends or whatever happens to his friends, it's just gonna hit harder because it's like he's probably gonna do it again.
yeah, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And that's one of my like big predictions about like the last book is that he's gonna end up sacrificing everything he loved for nothing. Like he's gonna find out at the end that he literally did everything for nothing. That's my prediction.
I could see it. It'd definitely be a good lesson that Stephen King could convey of like, you know, it's not necessarily worth it to sacrifice everything you have to try to get to something else when that something else might not be good enough or it might not actually be what you think it is. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I would be okay with that ending. I could see how it'd be controversial though if he went that path, but we'll find out
Yeah,
because we know the ending is controversial, so we'll kind of see.
yes. I do know that I think from what I've been told, and this is just from like one other person who's read the whole series, or two people who've read all the Dark Tower books, is that it's basically is what they said. So they said I think it was more like a 30-70, like 30% of people like really loved it, and then like the other 70% were just like either hated it or thought it was eh.
Well, it's tough because I don't know what to call it. I guess I'll just call it like Game of Thrones syndrome. But it's like you're setting up such an epic thing. The Dark Tower is such an epic, powerful, ethereal thing, and we don't really know what it really represents. And there's all these expectations wrapped around in it, so it's really difficult to take all those expectations and meet all of them and end it well. When you create such an
Yeah,
epic world and you build it in such a way, which is kind of
yeah,
what happened with Game of Thrones TV show. I mean, we'll see when George R. Martin finishes the books, if he ever actually finishes the books.
yeah.
But
But
yeah,
then,
it's hard to like create. I mean, there's so many examples of it. Even like TV shows, other TV shows like Lost, for example. There's like the first few seasons were good, and then they ended horribly because they just didn't know how to end it. So
hmm
when you have like those epic
that's
expectations, it's hard.
yeah. That's what's kind of like interesting about like our perspective is that we get to read the whole thing through without having to wait for a book and already knowing that the ending is controversial. So for people who've been reading this since it was just a short story before the first book even was a book, it was just a collection of short stories. So like those people have been reading this from like the 80s and onward, like had like 20, 30 years of build up. for this
Right. Yep.
series to end. And
Definitely.
so at that point it becomes such integrated into like a part of your life. It's like kind of like how Lord of the Rings movies are, or the Star Wars movies are to me now. Uh, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like it's like the same thing, but I'm not even 30, so I couldn't even imagine someone being like in their teens or early 20s, and then 30 years later, they're like, ah, fuck this book series. I'm like, oh, this was
Well, that's how
wasted.
you feel with Game of Thrones, right? You know, you spend that's how I felt with Game of Thrones, where it's like, we were ingratiated into it because I'd been watching it every season as it comes out, every episode as it comes out, so you have all
Yeah.
that time to like saturate on it and like think about it, and then when the ending comes, it's horrible because it's not, it just
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
meet the
bullshit.
expectations. But I agree with you, like we're reading it at a time where all the books are out, so we don't have the added bias of like waiting forever for these books and like being hungry to get these books, and then you finally get the book and you're like, what the hell, so
Yeah,
I think it'll
because
be more, hopefully, a little bit more objective from our side when we get to the ending. We'll be able to evaluate it a little bit better without the pain of like waiting.
yeah, because honestly, like at this point, I haven't read any book series to where I'm waiting for something to come out. Like I read Fire and Blood, but for like that's like the prequel Game of Thrones book, but I'm not gonna read any of the books until Winds of Winter comes out, because I'm not gonna wait on two books when the series is like already almost done. It's like
Yeah,
I'll wait for the last one, but I don't know. I haven't gone through a series where I've had to like wait and anticipate the next book.
yeah,
So that kind of like, and so reading like these books that way, I'm trying to like think of like how would someone feel reading 20, 30 years, like waiting for all these books and then getting the ending and it being not satisfying enough, and they're just kind of like, I'm like, wow, such a huge letdown. It's like seeing your favorite band in concert and then their show sucking ass.
yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Like, yeah, the singer like can't hit the notes, just sucks. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like absolute garbage.
yeah, no, I agree. But
But
yeah, I'm excited for this next part though. This part one obviously was pretty short. We covered pretty much everything, but
yeah.
was there anything else from this you wanted to
Um,
bring up?
I just want to ask you what your predictions are for Roland's past, because I think the next one of my coworkers already told me a few things, and I'm just like, kind of fuck. I'm like, well, I know that's not necessarily a spoiler, but it would have been nice if you didn't fucking tell me that.
Yeah, that's why I don't tell anybody what books I'm reading for that reason, because I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't want you to talk to me about the book until I'm done.
Well,
'Cause-
it's like
yeah.
it's safe when I tell people I read Wheel of Time because no one fucking reads anymore. So, but so no one I know except for one person has finished it or has even read it. Like the only people I know who have read it is like me, you, and my friend down here.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah. So what are your predictions? Did you already say
For
that?
his
I was kind of
past. Yeah, I think, it sounds like we're gonna talk about the love interest first. I am at I mean the theme so far is like betrayal and him doing everything to get to the Dark Tower. So I feel like it's gonna be more of that. Like he's gonna have a really serious love interest, and then at some point he's gonna betray her for the mission, and it's gonna be the same with his friends. And like maybe that will lead into like he's gonna talk so much about betraying everyone that the other people in the group are not gonna be as trustworthy of him, and maybe that will lead into some kind of betrayal later on. Maybe instead of Roland betraying them, they'll betray Roland because they know Roland's gonna fuck them over. So I don't know.
oh shit.
So maybe a little
Oh,
bit of a twist there. Um, but I don't know. Yeah, I think it'll be some kind of betrayal though by him for sure.
Yeah, I mean, basically, mine's pretty much the same way. He's gonna do something that's gonna lead to some people's deaths. Uh, and it's and just to finish the mission or something. And that's it. That's what I think is gonna happen. I guess we'll
Yeah.
find out. But that's my conclusion.
Yeah,
So
we'll find out. I'm excited to read the next part. Yeah. Anything else?
I think I'm good. The next part two, Suzanne, chapter one, Beneath the Kissing Moon. It's gonna be good.
Nice.
You're real good.
Yeah.
All right. I
All
guess
right.
how much do you want to read? Do you just want to do all part two?
Yeah, we can do all part two. I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but yeah, I'm cool with that.
It's.
I'm cool with
I mean, if we can do 10 chapters of Wheel of Time,
that.
this is nothing. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
nothing.
no, I can. We can definitely do all part two. It's cool with me. So,
Cool.
all right. Well,
All right.
I can do the outro here. So, thanks for listening again. Of course, to Two Rivers Tabac Book Club. We're gonna do part two, like we're just talking about for next week. If you're listening on YouTube, any kind of comment or like on the video would be awesome. It really helps to grow the channel, and we're very appreciative of any feedback to the podcast. This is still very new for us, so we appreciate any kind of feedback. Same goes for Spotify, or if you're listening to podcasts on Spotify or any other platform, feel free to give us a review. And we also have a Twitter at Two Rivers Tabac, so give us a follow.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah! All right.
Yeah. I appreciate anyone who's listened to this far. Hopefully my mic is fixed by now. We'll find out.
It definitely sounds better on my end, I think.
All right, that's good.
All right. Well, we'll see you all next week with part two from Wizard and Glass.
Yeah. Smell you later, Red.